I believe we usually have introductions right now, but I think I would like to instead bring us into executive session. And while we are voting on executive session, we can announce ourselves, say that we'd like to go into executive session, and let everybody know that you are in a private space and nobody else in your home can hear the activities that are going on. Does that make sense to everyone? And then I'm assuming Jessica can then take out the people who are not on the board and put them in another room until we come back. Okay. I don't have the legal language to go into executive session. Does someone have that can read that for us? Jessica.
Let's go ahead. Yep.
Okay, and then so just to touch base, I'm going to actually put the executive session committee members into a breakout room. And so after I read the legal language here, then I will manually move you guys all over. And then at 9 o'clock or when you guys are ready, you can pop back into this room. It does not record the room breakout session, but it does record this main room. So that way we're covered as far as the minutes and everything else.
Okay.
All right. So for executive session, we've called meeting to order. So pursuant to CRS 246402-4B and FI, the board in open session is determined whether it will hold a closed executive session. The issues to be discussed involve personal matters related to the annual evaluation of the executive PPACG. The chair shall poll the board members, and upon consent of 2/3 of the members present may hold a closed executive session. If consent to the executive session is not given, the item may be discussed in open session or withdrawn for consideration. So do we have 2/3 that are?
I'm hoping.
It looks like we have our quorum and everything, so we should be good as long as everybody is good.
Okay. I have the agenda up now, so I can help. Okay, so Ray,
So I'm going to go ahead and select everybody that's going to move into the breakout room. So feel better.
Let's first go through. We first have to vote to go through to into executive session. Okay.
Correct.
So can you call the names of the board members? They can say yes and confirm that they are alone, and then we can move into executive session.
Don't we need a motion in a second first?
Give me 1 second.
Norm moved and I'll second.
Okay, I didn't get that, but somebody did.
Who was our second on that, please?
This is Dick Elsner.
Thank you.
Dick. All right, Norm and Dick. Okay, so those that I am moving over.
Well, we still need to vote before we move.
Yeah, we have to vote before we move. Did she go? Oh, there she is.
Just waiting for the vote.
Okay, so can you please call the names of the board members and then we will vote as we're called.
Yes, that's what I was going to do. Okay, here we go. All right. So I see Andres Pico.
Yes, I'm not alone, but I do have the headphones on, so no one else can hear.
Okay. Bruce Davis.
Yes, and I am alone.
Okay. Commissioner Cammie Bremer.
Yes, and I am alone.
All right. Mayor Don Wilson.
Yes, and I'm alone.
Okay. Miss Jill Gabler.
Yes, and I'm alone.
Okay. Norm Steen.
Yes, I'm alone.
Okay. Dick Elsner.
Yes, and I'm alone.
And Sharon Thompson.
Yes, I'm alone except for my dog Haley, who's a really great secret keeper.
Okay. And Val Carr.
Yes, and I'm alone. Thank you.
Okay, and is there any board members that I missed that are on the line? Okay, so I think that's everybody. So if you guys are good to vote and move forward into executive session, I'm going to go ahead and open the room. It'll give you the option to join. So you're going to want to join and it's going to bump you over. And then you're in there, it'll give you the option to toggle back over. So,
Okay. Okay.
All right.
I expect some issues with this.
So there you go. All right, with that, everybody else that's on the line can just hang out. You can mute yourselves for a bit. They'll probably be over there till about 9 o'clock, at which time the meeting will resume and we'll call it back into session.
Sounds good. Thank you. See you at 9.
Thank you.
Yep.
Jessica, can you hear me?
Yep, I
This
can.
is John Ross. Okay,
Hi,
just
John.
wanted to test that because I was
Sure, no
having
problem.
audio problems there, but thanks.
Yeah.
And by the way, I mean, I'm on for Shane Ferguson and Richard Zamora for CDOT, so.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Jessica, this is Lizzie Kemp. I just wanted to double check that my audio is working too.
Lizzie, this is Gordon Rick. I heard you.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Technology is scary.
You gotta tell me how you did that so I can set it up for Thanksgiving.
Yeah, I kicked myself out of the whole meeting and had to come back in, so I'm obviously not doing it very well. Okay, go ahead.
Are there people still meeting in the other room, or do I need to pull them all back?
You need to make an announcement, just for the record, public record, that no decisions were made and so on. There's some standard language, I believe, for the record.
I'm sorry, can we start the meeting? Are we all here?
That's what I was asking. Is there still anybody in the other room that needs to be pulled back in, or is it good to go?
No, I was the last one to leave and then I pushed the wrong buttons.
Me too.
Okay, all right.
All right. Oh, good. I'm glad somebody else, as soon as I did it, I went, oh, that was the wrong one.
Okay, well then, we are out of executive session and we will continue on with the rest of our meeting. And oh my goodness, it's 8:58. Should we wait till 9?
If we can get a motion to come back into session, that would be good. So,
Okay.
but Norm was saying is that we need that motion to saying no formal decisions were made, and we are reconvening the normal meeting. So if someone,
Moved. This is Dick Elsner. I'll make
Thank
that motion.
Second. Sharon
Okay.
Thompson.
thank you, Sharon.
All those in favor, just say aye.
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 Are there any nays? Okay,
And when we start at 9, if we can circle back and do an agenda approval motion, that would be great.
yes, okay. I have the agenda up now so I can follow
I can
along.
share my screen as well and have that available for everyone.
Okay, boy, we're so efficient today. Well, Andy says we can go ahead and start. Should we start? Let's start. Okay, so we are called back to order. We have established a quorum. We have already done introductions. I need a motion to approve today's agenda.
Moved. Sharon Thompson.
Thank you.
Second, Don Wilson.
Thank you, Don. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Are there any nays? Okay, we have already done item 3, which is the executive session. We are on to item 4, which is public comments and presentation. Is there anyone on the call today who is not part of the board of directors who would like to make comments about anything that is not on today's agenda? If so, you can speak now for 3 minutes. Okay, on to item number 5, which is the consent calendar. We have 2 items on this agenda. We have the approval of October's meeting minutes and the summary of financials. If these items are acceptable, I would appreciate a motion to approve the consent items.
This is Norm, so moved.
Thank you.
Sharon, second.
Thank you, Sharon. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 And so now we are on to item 6, which is presentations. The first item on this agenda is South Power's resiliency study presentation. I am not sure who is providing this presentation.
Madam Chair, I think Jennifer Irvin with El Paso County is going to kick this off and then hand it over to a presenter for a brief presentation from CDOT.
Perfect. Good morning, Jennifer.
Good morning, Madam Chair, PPACG Board of Directors. Just a brief introduction. Earlier this year, you awarded MMOF funds for the Power South PEL, and this was a project sponsored by El Paso County, but it's really truly a regional effort, sorry, with partners at PPACG, CDOT, El Paso County, Colorado Springs, City of Fountain, and some other jurisdictions. So the next step that we've been working on is our IGA with CDOT, and then also we have finished the scope of work to be able to advertise and get a contractor on board for that feasibility study. But as we were working on that, we were approached by CDOT. They have a new program, and it's including a resiliency part in every PEL that CDOT is doing. So they approached us and asked us if we wanted to partner on that program. And we thought it was appropriate to come back and just give you a high level understanding about what that program is about and what's going to be included as kind of an extra thing in our PEL study. So as we know in the Pikes Peak region, resiliency is very important. We've all had effects from our 4 or 5 presidential disaster declarations. And so I think that this is an exciting portion to be able to include in our study. And I just want to thank CDOT for their partnership and all the other jurisdictions so as a part of that, just introduce CDOT and for them to just do a brief overview of this pilot program that we're working with them on. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Jennifer.
Thanks, Jennifer. Do you want me to make my presentation now?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Hi, Lizzie.
Hi. So my name is Lizzie Kemp, and I work at CDOT. I manage a relatively new program at CDOT called the Resiliency Program. And as Jennifer mentioned, it's something that CDOT's really become very interested in trying to pursue since, in particular, since the 2013 flooding event. But we've obviously had a number of other natural hazards and pandemic hazards and cybersecurity threats that have brought home the idea that planning for resiliency is a really good thing for us to do. So I have a very brief, I think I need permission to share.
Okay, I went on and made you a co-host so that you can share your screen.
Okay.
Give you that option.
Okay, there we go. So let's see, are you all seeing my PowerPoint? Are you all seeing my PowerPoint?
Yes,
Yes.
I am.
Yes.
Fantastic. Okay, thank you. Let me start this then. Okay, so I have a very brief PowerPoint presentation that I wanted to give you all just to sort of explain what risk and resiliency is. So what is transportation resiliency? This is the definition that CDOT has been using, which is actually the AASHTO definition. Resiliency is the ability to prepare and plan for, absorb, recover from, or more successfully adapt to adverse events. I like this definition because it is fairly simple and easy to understand. There are often considered to be 4 attributes of resiliency. Robustness, which is the strength of an asset or a system to withstand those threats. Redundancy, whether there are backup routes, redundant routes or backup systems in place that can fall into place or be used if another asset is taken out. Resourcefulness, how well are we set up to be able to identify, diagnose, and treat problems, and how quickly our resources can be mobilized, and rapidity, how quickly we can restore functionality in a timely way. Resiliency at a DOT can be a couple of different things. It can be physical, so the ability of the physical assets to perform in the event of a hazard, but it's also organizational, and we've seen that recently within the pandemic. I think everybody has organizationally. What is our capacity to make decisions, to take actions, to as an organization to keep our functionality going? And both of those things are important. So back in 2018, CDOT, the Commission, Transportation Commission, adopted a policy directive 1905, that officially put the resiliency program into place and charged CDOT with trying to integrate the idea of resiliency into day-to-day decisions. So we're trying to look at right now, how do we incorporate resiliency into our planning, project development, environmental reviews, pretty much everything we do.
Earlier that I think the one thing I've seen is people wearing masks because it's required, but they're wearing them improperly. So that's, I know.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure if my audio is breaking up or if.
No, it's okay. Someone else was speaking. Please, everyone, make sure you're on mute so we can hear Lizzie. Okay.
I'm sorry, if there's a question, I'd be happy to answer it or comment.
No, I don't think there is.
Okay.
Go ahead. Sorry.
So basically this policy directive set up the formal authority for this program to exist within CDOT, and It actually is a program with a staff of one, that is me. But I do have a lot of help from a lot of other staff at CDOT. We have a formal working group that's been meeting for several years now that represents all different aspects of CDOT business. And we also have an executive oversight committee that includes folks like our Deputy Director Herman Stockinger and our Chief Engineer and a number of other executive folks within CDOT. So the project that we're talking about today and that we're hoping PPACG will support us on is that we want to partner with you all on the South Powers Boulevard PEL project. In February of this year, we kicked off a project that we call our Resiliency Integration Project. And it's basically a project that has 5 proof of concept case studies that we're looking at. We've done a whole lot of work at CDOT about developing data on risk and resiliency. What we haven't done a ton of yet, and really nobody around the country has yet, is figure out how do we use that data to improve our decisions? How do we use the data we have about risk and resiliency to make better investments? So that's what these 5 case studies are intended to do, is to show how do we incorporate resiliency into asset management decisions? How do we incorporate resiliency into some of our maintenance practices? And then there are 5 case studies, as I mentioned. One of them is related to environmental documents and how do we incorporate resiliency into analysis that we do when we're doing either an EIS or an EA or a PEL. South Powers Boulevard is the one that we want to partner with you all on to demonstrate that. So this basically would sort of set the standard, we think, for how you can effectively incorporate questions and data about risk and resiliency into an environmental study. We've got 2 of those case studies underway, which are shown on this slide. 3 others will get started in 2021, and we would love for South Powers Boulevard to be the project chosen to demonstrate that. So as kind of a tickler for you guys, maybe hopefully entice you to understand why this is a good thing, there's potential for federal funding for resiliency. In pretty much every reauthorization proposal that's been out there in the last year and a half or so, and none of them have moved forward, I'll note that. And we don't expect them to probably until after the presidential transition, but there has been significant language and funding identified for resiliency and transportation. So the latest one, this Invest in America Act, I think it's the latest one, had about 1.5 trillion in it that could deal with climate change and resiliency. So for resiliency in particular, I think there was, gosh, I'm not remembering the figure right now, but bottom line is there's the potential for some significant funding for folks who have planned for this, can demonstrate the benefit cost of doing some proactive resiliency work. So I just wanted to leave that as sort of an enticement to you all as to why this, if you weren't convinced before, there's skin in the, there's money here that could be had by doing this, and we really look forward to working with you all on this project. So that's all I had. Unless there are questions, I'd be happy to answer any.
This is Commissioner Stan with a question.
Go ahead, Stan.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Lizzie. For the you saw that you showed 1.5 trillion in funding. Could you give us kind of a scope of what the funding could potentially be used for? Is it to do studies, or is it actually to maybe do specific road work? Powers, of course, has several creeks and other waterways that travel underneath it. And, sometimes those are challenges for both the road and really also the community. So is it actually to help fund physical road projects, or is it studies, or is it everything? What could it fund?
Yeah, so right now, as I mentioned, there's not a reauthorization program in place yet. It's really just a proposal at this point. And there have been about 3 different reauthorization bills floated out there. None of them have really taken hold. And they've varied in terms of the dollar amount that they've put in for resiliency. They've also varied in terms of the types of things that can be funded. I would say, though, for the most part, they've been very broad. And I think 2 of the 3 of them set up both discretionary portion of funding and a formula portion of funding that would come back to the state. So part of it would be up to CDOT to determine how to spend those dollars. And I would certainly, from the resiliency program perspective, I would suggest all of those things be able to be funded. As we get further along and the planning has become more standard, I'm hoping to see more capital improvements. So yeah, I mean, I think it's going to have to develop over time. I do believe that any program that they put out there will have kind of what's like a pre-disaster mitigation program, so that where you do physical improvements in advance of a disaster happening, that can minimize the the negative impact of those events.
Okay, and then maybe a follow-up. What attracted you to South Powers as the potential case for this concept? Why that versus another CDOT road in our community?
Well, in part, to be honest, it's because you guys are, the timing is right. You know, you're ready to go and it fits with our timing. But also, as you mentioned, there are a couple of creeks and some, a couple of things that are meaty that we can actually look at. And we think that there will be some interesting things to look at for that corridor. So a couple of things, timing, but also there are some good features about that corridor that make it interesting from a resiliency perspective. I think also it was the connection to military travel and how that could be folded in terms of national resiliency.
Great. And just something that's in my mind, and then I'll be quiet. But on that particular road, there's a lot of potential for that road to become a limited access, multi-grade at the multi-level at the intersections kind of road. It is something that our community really needs, because we don't really have a second limited access north-south corridor. We're relying a lot on 25, and then a lot of people have to travel from the east over to 25 to go north and south. And you might be well aware of the huge amount of traffic on that road, which is stopped over and over again via those traffic lights.
So that kind of gets to that redundancy point that I talked about earlier, right?
Yeah.
You need a backup plan, and hopefully that's something that we can look at in this PEL.
Okay, great, thanks.
I have a comment.
Norm?
Yeah, thank you. Lizzie, thanks for coming on. Just a couple points. Good to see CDOT embracing resiliency. I know it's kind of been embedded now, it's maybe a formalized program, but CDOT should also recognize that smaller governments, local governments, also have resiliency programs. CDOT is not the only one who's working to be resilient. And some of the frustration that local governments experience is that we're being agile and adaptive and resilient, all the good things, but state structure does not accommodate our resilience. It still remains bureaucratic, structured, narrow-minded. Maybe I'm not going to be negative here, but any resiliency program has to be able to embrace other elements of resiliency outside their own program. So it's kind of a big idea, but I'm hoping that CDOT, for example, we have fires here. We had people donate. We'll bring a bulldozer. The mine said, "I've got something will cut a 12-foot swath through the forest." Forest says, "No, I'm sorry, we can't take that. It's not red carded." We were not allowed to be resilient because the bureaucracy of the state and federal government wouldn't permit it. So I don't know if you have any comments there.
I guess I'd like to learn more about it. If we're not coordinating well, then we're not being very resilient. I mean, that's a part of being resourceful. I think in this whole idea of, we need to make better connections and better agreements and arrangements with our partners in order to be able to respond to these things. So
just something as you build kind of a theme of resilience at the state level, recognize that your resilience also has to accommodate our resilience. And that gets messy at times, because now you may have 64 different counties with a different perspective on resilience. So I'm just kind of putting it out there that it should be part of the discussion as you formulate your program.
Absolutely, point well taken.
Yep, thank you.
Thanks, Norm. Any other questions from board members? I appreciate those questions, especially hearing more about why that project was chosen for Powers. It's kind of the whole shovel ready thing, but with the military, I think that's really important. So thank you, Lizzie. Okay, we are going to move on to our next item, which is another presentation. And I am actually trying to bring it up. Okay, a traffic media campaign general safety report.
Good morning. Jason O'Brien, PPACG, Transportation Planner. Nice to see everyone. Jessica, if you can make me a co-host real quick so that I can do screen sharing, that would be great.
You should have that ability now.
Okay, thank you. Okay, can everybody see the presentation?
No, not yet.
Okay, sorry. Getting there.
No worries.
Okay, how about now?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I'm going to talk just briefly this morning about the recently completed traffic safety media campaign, and then just give a pretty brief high-level traffic safety report on mainly focused on things that have been happening since the pandemic. To give a little bit of background and refresh our memory about the traffic safety campaign, last winter, PPACG started asking what the regional agency could do to assist with the record-breaking fatalities that happened in 2018 and really what our role could be. And so after talking with engineers, planners, and law enforcement in the region, those conversations really pointed us to driver behavior as being the real gap in the overall traffic safety process that happens. And that really pointed us to doing a media campaign as the best way to reach people and try to alter that behavior a little bit. In May, the project was formally incorporated into our work program for this year. And then in June 2020, we were fortunate to hire Drive Smart Colorado to run the campaign for us. And I think looking back, they were a great selection just because they're so experienced in this exact area. So they were able to really hit the ground running and bring a lot of knowledge and expertise. In August, just a couple of months ago, Drive Smart brought a progress report to this board showing some ads that have been developed for the campaign and just talking about tactics and targeting that were being done. And then in October, the campaign was wrapped up and a really great final report was delivered. That's actually a great template for anybody else who would want to do this type of effort. And a lot of what you'll see in the next few slides come from that report, which Drive Smart Colorado did a really great job and thorough job putting that together. And there should be a link to that complete report in the memo for this agenda item. So if anybody can't find that who wants it or it's not loading, please let me know. A little bit of structure, I'll go through targeting and issues, project approach and results. So one great thing about hiring Drive Smart Colorado to do this is that they really know what's going on in the region and generally in this area. They're very well plugged in with law enforcement, with school districts. They've got representation from Colorado Department of Health and Environment. They really know what's going on. And so we're able to have some great conversations to help us find our issues and our audience to know what's going on and where the help is needed right now. They also got some great helpful data from El Paso County and CDOT. And where the data and those conversations pointed us was specifically to distracted driving, drinking and driving, and then drinking and driving on a motorcycle. I know that last one seems very specific, but there'll be a little bit more about that later on. And the data also indicated that we should go fairly broad in terms of age range. So at 18 to 55-year-old males and females. And a little sidebar there, it's a common misconception that it's our youngest and oldest drivers who are pushing up the crash statistics. And at least in this region, that is not true. The people pushing up the serious crash statistics or serious injuries and fatalities are experienced drivers in their prime who are making bad choices and taking bad risks. And finally, when we were thinking about which medium to use to do the ads, we decided on social media for a couple of reasons. First, if you remember, there was a little election going on at the time. And that really used up all of the affordable traditional media time that we could have purchased. Second, there was an increase in social media use since the start of the pandemic. So really, you get more bang for your buck using social media since that time. So between those, we decided on social media. And here's just a quick little graphic showing some of the electronic diversions and distractions that people have been using increasingly since February, March of this year. And the second one from the left on top shows 15% increased use in social media. And also notable is that most of those surveyed said they plan to continue these behaviors going forward. And you can find this in the report if you want to see it a little bit more. So DriveSmart developed 3 ads to put out over social media. They're static graphics here, but they are also short videos, just a few seconds long, little animations, and with some voiceovers. And the principles used were conciseness and clarity and keeping them clean, not going into some of the gore that you sometimes see with traffic safety campaigns. And they did a good job. So to show how we invested, this is always sort of a little game that you play. How do you invest your advertising dollars? And fortunately, DriveSmart Colorado does work with partners who are experts at really optimizing how those funds are invested to get the best bang for our buck. And so what you see here is a snapshot of how the advertising dollars were invested over several social media platforms: Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Gmail, and Spotify. And we were happy to be able to target our entire Council of Governments area, El Paso, Teller, and Park County. Some of these social media platforms let you choose the counties. You can just select what counties where you want to run your ads. And others, we selected all the zip codes in a county in order to get that county covered. And I think, I hope you'll agree, I was very shocked by the results, by what we got for that investment level. And we ended up getting, between August 1st and September 1st, 5.2 million views of the ads and nearly 50,000 engagements. And what's cool about this is I'm pretty sure there aren't 5 million people in the 3-county region, which means that with the right targeting, the target audience, many of those people saw these ads multiple times, so we get good saturation, so hopefully helps get the message across. I personally, and I've talked to others too, I was just watching YouTube videos at night or just doing whatever, and I had the ads pop up on my social media several times. So I guess I'm one of the problem people, my demographic. And then in addition to those over 5 million views, almost 50,000 engagements, which are clicks or somebody choosing to interact with the ads in some way. So that's really it for the campaign results. There are more details in the full report if anybody's interested in seeing it. Again, there's a link to that full report on the memo for this agenda item. So some observations and suggestions from DriveSmart, who's very experienced, also from CDOT, who does these kind of campaigns on a larger scale most years, I think. They've done it quite a bit. First is that media campaigns are actually highly effective. Law enforcement and CDOT have reported seeing pretty good bounce in numbers, but without some sustainability, without some repetition, the gains can be lost pretty quickly. But they've said that the more something is repeated, the longer the gains last, and you eventually start to see that safer driving culture emerge. And finally, something we didn't do this time, but would certainly look at for the future. You get really great results coordinating media campaigns with enforcement campaigns. In other words, you go out and say there's going to be extra enforcement and these are bad things to do. And then you validate that with an enforcement campaign. Follow-up activities. DriveSmart Colorado, unfortunately, will be shuttering as of next month. They won't be around anymore as such. And something that's coming out of that is there's discussion going on about potential transition of some of their functions to PPACG. There are no specific proposals regarding that right now, but it's something that we're discussing with them, that we're feeling it out and trying to see what that might look like. Because it would be a shame to completely lose DriveSmart Colorado. They've done a lot of good. They have a lot of great connections, a lot of great materials that have been developed. We just would like to look into retaining a lot of that great value that's been created. And an excellent way to follow up on the 2020 media campaign will be the 2021 campaign, to start getting into some of that repetition and changing to that culture of safer driving. Might not look exactly the same. There's no election, but there's plenty of time to talk more about that and figure out the best way to do it. So that's all for the safety campaign. If there are no urgent questions at this point, I can go into the briefing, or I can take questions, however you'd like to do it.
Yeah, go ahead, Jason, and we'll ask questions at the end.
Okay, great. This will be pretty short and high level. What I'm really going to touch on are just some of the real standout statistics from the last year and the last couple of years. So it's not going to be very detailed, just the things that jump. Nationally, since the pandemic, and I know there are a lot of questions, there's been a lot of curiosity about this. What's been happening with traffic crashes since the pandemic? Crash rates actually have risen, and for a very specific reason. Unlike other years, when you get sort of the normal flux and flow of traffic crashes, when there's a bad year, a hotter year, a little uptick, happens for a lot of reasons. Not this year. The reason has been very specific and narrow. It's an increase in risky behaviors, specifically driving 90% of that increase. What about when a lot of states were under stay-at-home orders, like Colorado? There was that period of a few months when we were expected to stay at home unless we had something critical we needed to do. What happened then? Minor crash numbers decreased, along with overall traffic went way, way down. But serious injury and fatal crashes did not increase, or actually increased in some areas. For example, in March, when total traffic was down almost 20% compared to March of the previous year, there was a 14% increase in fatal crashes per mile. And the frequency and the top speed of speeders increased, with police routinely clocking people in at speeds in excess of 130 miles per hour. So it was the fastest speeding that went up the most. Unfortunately, there was an increase in first responders being struck and killed. And there was an increase in serious crashes involving trucks. And it's just an interesting sidebar here that in a normal recession, fatality rates tend to drop. So in a normal recession, you get a little less traffic and fatality rates, serious crashes go down. The opposite happened this time in 2020. And as we speak here today, rates of speeding, especially the fastest speeding and drunken drug driving, are still up above normal. Colorado in particular, the last few years have been an interesting time. I'll start by saying that typically, if you look at the crash data over the past few decades, Colorado is about average among the states. Not really a standout. We could do better, but we're not doing that bad, comparatively speaking. 2018 to 2020, that interesting time. 2018 was a historic high for fatal crashes in Colorado. As far as I know, it's the deadliest year on record. Then we were back to about the 5-year average, more typical numbers in 2019. And I happen to know that behind the scenes there, a lot of people were working very hard to bring those numbers down. And I think they did a good job. Unfortunately, in 2020, we lost some of those gains again. But again, that was for an abnormal, very specific reason. It was an increase in risky behavior. As of this August, some standout statistics for Colorado: motorcycle deaths are up 25% from last year. 25% is a big jump for anything in transportation. And you can see that's well above the normal fluctuations that happen with these over the years. So very bad year for motorcycle deaths, also for pedestrian deaths. So you can see this isn't too out of whack, the pedestrian deaths for 2020 with the normal fluctuations. Did manage to beat the deadliest year, 2018, and we lost a lot of the gains that were made in 2019. That's pedestrian deaths. Another interesting note is older driver deaths, I would imagine, because this population is afraid of infection and how deadly it can be for them, and they're staying home. Older driver deaths are down over 30%. To drill down a little bit deeper, Region 2, that's our CDOT subregion. It's actually a large area of southern Colorado, but the population centers really are Colorado Springs and Pueblo. So that might help you think about it that way. As of September, basically reflects the state trend. We had a historic high. I know it was our deadliest year on record in 2018. Again, that improvement in 2019, and the gains partly lost again in 2020. Standouts, again, I'm not sure what's going on with motorcycles, but our Region 2 motorcycle fatalities have gone up way faster than even the spike in state numbers. They've more than doubled, which is an over 100% increase in motorcycle fatalities. Again, statewide, this also happened, but our Region 2 increase was much more dramatic. So 25% jump for the state, over 100% for our region. Impaired driving fatalities have gone up this year. We didn't manage to beat 2018, our deadliest year, not yet. But again, much higher than last year. So that's it for the safety briefing, very high level, just some things that jumped out. Sorry if it's a little bit morbid, but hopefully it's specific enough to be helpful. In terms of what's next, our senior transportation planner, Catherine Wanger, has asked CDOT to bring a presentation to you next month about the statewide traffic safety plan and performance targets. And again, we're in those ongoing discussions with Drive Smart Colorado about possibly taking on some of their functions. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions or comments.
Thank you, Jason. And I appreciate seeing these next steps. I think they'll be helpful. And actually being morbid is important. The motorcycle deaths, it's incredible how high they've been this year. And I think people don't seem to understand that the pandemic has made it worse because there are fewer people on the roads, which incentivizes people to go faster. They just feel like, hey, there's nobody out here. And that has been very detrimental to us as a community. So are there other questions from the board for Jason?
Just an observation. We still got a month and a half left of 20.
Right?
12%
Yeah. Yeah. And counting, right?
Yeah, I thought the same thing because we keep seeing our own deaths in Colorado Springs from crashes, and we're right. We're just really high this year, and it's November. So
yeah, I might make a comment. We've already surpassed our total number of fatalities in the city of Colorado Springs for all of last year. We're way on track in the entire county to at least meet what we did in 2018, if not surpass it.
Right. And one thing you didn't mention, and I would be amiss if I didn't mention, is there have been a lot of bicyclist deaths this year too. We just lost another cyclist last week. So even though we're adding bike lanes, people need to drive the speed limit and they need to pay attention. That's how we reduce crashes.
And Jill, bicyclists are counted in that overall fatality.
Right. I know, I just wanted to highlight them.
You're absolutely right. No, it's terrible all the way around. It's terrible.
Okay, other comments, observations?
Madam Chair, this is Stan, a question as well.
Okay, go ahead, Stan.
Yeah, thanks. Hey, Jason, has anybody tried to do a study or a survey to kind of get down to the nature of why this is happening? I mean, I think we can all probably presume it has something to do with all of the things that are going on in 2020 that are making the changes. But, is it, Jill mentioned maybe it was because the roads are more open. Maybe it's because people are under a lot of stress and they're just looking for some way to do a short release. So they get on their fast, whatever, and go out on the road and try to take some stress out. But really the question is, I'm not sure I know what's causing it. I just was interested in knowing if anybody's tried to make an attempt to get that figured out, maybe by doing surveys or something.
I'm actually not aware of any, and it would be a great thing to do. There are a lot of theories. I've also heard the hypothesis many times that it's because when the roads are more open, people are more tempted to speed. I've heard what you've heard, that there's been a little bit of a breakdown in social structure because of people being isolated. And I know the traffic engineers I've talked to who work with safety data every day say there's just been a scourge of what they just call selfish, thoughtless behavior. And so there's probably deeper questions of the social fabric with people being so isolated, but I'm not aware of any detailed studies or surveys that have been done.
Yeah, I tell you, because this is kind of an interesting anomaly coming from all of the different stresses that we've had this year. Wow, it'd be great if somebody would actually do a scientific study of that, because if we could get any findings out of that, that might actually help us kind of design responses to those things. So, and that might
Especially if it
actually be
ends up-
helpful for a long term whenever we get into environments that have maybe more stress or, whatever the deal is. We can be working on those issues that might actually reduce fatalities. So I don't know if there's anybody that's contemplating that, or if we could maybe ask around and see if anybody would be up for doing some kind of study. It seems to me to make sense to do that.
We can ask, I can follow up on that. And it might even help with this crisis if it ends up going on for several more years, which it could potentially.
Right. And that's something CDOT can maybe address. We can address with CDOT next month when they're with us.
Yeah.
Andy Pico, did you have a question? I thought I saw you chime in.
Yes, ma'am. I've got two quick questions. I noticed on the first part where you talked about the media campaign on drunk driving, any consideration of or why not marijuana induced driving? In other words, why was it drunk driving as opposed to just in general under the influence?
I can dig in and find out that data for you. I think that drunk driving is still a bigger problem, but with that being said, I know that drugged driving is a significant issue, and we've heard from our law enforcement partners about that as well. So I can get back to you on that and figure out, what those proportions are. But I think at the moment, drunk driving is still the larger issue.
Well, yeah, there's a data issue in that, and it'll probably take too long to discuss right now, but trying to track drugged driving has some limitations to it. The other question I have real quick, you mentioned an increase in truck crashes. Was that 18-wheeler type semi-trucks, as in freight truck traffic, or is that light?
Yes, that's freight trucks. Yes, it was.
Oh, interesting that they would be increasing. Okay, thank you.
And the theory behind that I've seen with the data that I found was that it's just open roads and higher speeds, and just generally what it all comes down to with the speeding and the impairment is that we're all just doing things faster than we can react. Our reaction time just isn't good enough for high speed, and then when you're drunk or drugged, your reaction times are even further reduced. So we've just got humans doing things faster than they can react to them, especially since the pandemic. That's been the issue.
Well said, Jason.
Thanks.
Well, thank you.
Other comments?
Yeah, this is Stan. Just one last thing from Andy Pico. The concept about drug driving, maybe is the term. It's heuristic feedback, not numeric. But when we talk to our deputy sheriffs and our sheriff, they indicate to me that while it's a lot more difficult to prove accidents that are caused by drugs, in a person's system, they believe that it's maybe as big as drunk driving. It's just that it's harder to get to the data because it's harder to test and prove it. So I do think that is a viable thing for us to continue to consider. I know that the sheriff's office has seen every time something's been legalized with regard to marijuana, a distinctive increase in impaired driving. So I don't know if there's a way to kind of get to that better, or maybe that's still a challenge, but to me, it feels like something that we should include in these studies.
Well, we've heard the same, and I think we can include that in the next safety briefing, and I think it won't be too long, so we can have a little bit more focus on that.
Yeah, this is Andy. We got the same feedback from CSPD, but there's also a how do you track that data, because they tend to stop looking for drugs, and it'd take a longer to discuss that here than we really have time for. But there's a data issue involved in that too.
But we can follow up on it and include something about it in the next safety briefing for sure.
Okay, thank you, Jason.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move on to our action items. Item 7 And the first one is our CDOT Vulnerable and Senior Transportation Grant, which I believe we are going to approve today. And that's Laura. Hello, Laura.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Jessica, can you put up the agenda with the memo?
Technical difficulties. Give me 1 second.
It's okay. And I apologize if my voice is going away. So thank you. A couple of months ago, CDOT approached PPACG with an opportunity to provide more money for specialized transit in our area to those agencies that lie within the urban Colorado Springs area. CDOT approached legislature to try to leverage some funding for those agencies in urbanized areas who were not able to receive CARES Act funding through CDOT. CARES Act funding through CDOT was allocated for the rural communities and was not allocated for the urbanized regions. So CDOT was able to leverage $1 million to distribute across all the MPOs in Colorado. And so our portion of that funding is $140,000. What you guys are voting on today is how we will be distributing that funding to agencies that were identified by CDOT as eligible agencies for this funding. So if you want to scroll down, Jess. The way that we came up with this distribution was we approached those agencies that were identified by CDOT and did a survey with them to identify some of their overarching needs during this time. And some of those highlighted needs were needs for match dollars. Some agencies were struggling with match dollars, salaries, as you know, the fluctuation of ridership has occurred, and then maintenance as well of their vehicles and PPE that they're having to incorporate into their vehicles. So from that, we also asked them what their overall transportation budgets were. And so as we were deciding on how to split this money up, we sort of took CDOT's approach of how they do this with the MPOs when they have money like this available, and decided upon taking a flat approach of providing around 2.88% to each agency's overall transportation budget. We do have the ability to collect 10% for PPACG to be able to manage this grant. So there's some reporting involved with CDOT. So this funding is really just to help boost some of these agencies that were unable to receive CARES Act funding in our region. So I'm asking the board to review this, and if you have any questions, please feel free to ask me now. And if not, we can move on.
Thank you, Laura. So are there any questions? And if not, I would appreciate a motion to approve this grant.
One question, it's Norm. Laura, was any consideration given to the Taylor County mobility groups, Taylor Senior Center, the Cripple Creek Transit System, and so on?
So Teller Senior Center and Cripple Creek both received CARES Act funding through CDOT. So this was for specifically agencies that were not eligible to receive CARES Act funding.
Right. Yeah, I thought that was the case. Thank you for clarifying.
Yes.
Good question. Any other questions? Okay, I would appreciate a motion.
This is Commissioner Stan. I'd like to make a motion to approve the receipt of this funding and also to approve the distribution as stated.
I'll
Perfect.
second, Norm.
Thank you, Norm. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Are there any nays? Okay, motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Laura, very much. This is great.
Thank you.
As I said, I love it when grants fall in our lap. So
Yes.
okay, the next item on the agenda is an update on the Colorado Springs Commission on Aging, and I believe that's Jody. Hello, Jody.
Yes, good morning, Madam Chair. This is Jody Barker, Director of the Area Agency on Aging. We brought forward a conversation that we were having last month around the transition of the City of Colorado Springs Commission on Aging from their boards and commissions to the Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments Area Agency on Aging. And so I won't read through the entire report, but there before you is an update of where we are. The city to dissolve the commission had to go through 3 votes. That was completed last week at last week's city council meeting as part of their meeting. And so what we're asking for today is a review and approval, a vote to allow us to continue moving forward to transition the commission under the Area Agency on Aging. This board will serve very differently than the Regional Advisory Council. As you know, we have the RAC committee whose primary mandate is to review and work with staff around the funding that comes from the Older Americans Act and the Older Coloradans Act. And so they have a very, very, very specific and narrow function as it relates to the AAA. The purpose of the commission will ultimately be very similar to what it was under the Colorado Springs City Council intention, and that is around advocacy and policy recommendations for older adults across the entire region instead of just the city of Colorado Springs. A few questions that have been asked of me as we have been pursuing this is there will not be any budget implications for this board. We can include their time as in-kind match. As you know, we currently use the RAC and other advisory councils as in-kind to many of our grant processes. And so this is yet another team of folks that we can use their in-kind time for us. They will be completely separate, like I mentioned, from the Regional Advisory Council. We're asking for a vote today to continue moving forward to stand this up within the Area Agency on Aging. The next couple of steps will be a bylaws updates, scope of work, and member composition to the December 9th Board of Directors meeting. That is currently in process. By voting to approve me moving forward with this today, it will allow us to, pardon me? It will allow us to continue moving forward with the planning. The ultimate goal is that the membership will represent the entire 3-county region, much as our RAC board does today. And the current makeup is 8 members with 5 vacancies. All 8 members have asked to be considered for standing up within the new Pikes Peak Region Commission on Aging. And so we would ask for your vote today to allow me to continue moving forward with this with our staff. Thank you. I'm open for questions.
Okay, thank you, Jody. So to be clear, this isn't the final vote. We still have to see the bylaws, and that will finalize some of the questions we may have around composition and who will be on the board. Today, we are just agreeing to approve the transition of the Colorado Springs Commission to the Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments Area Agency on Aging, to be known as the Pikes Peak Area Commission on Aging. So does anyone have any questions about that? Knowing next month will be the final vote.
Hey, Tony, this is Norm.
Yes, sir.
I know AAA has a federal standing, and I'm wondering if the structure of a local commission on aging has any federal recognition or any federally recognized authority other than what we as a board give it.
That's a great question. I'm happy to dig into that a little deeper. Not that I'm aware of. This would be just as it was within the city oversight. This will be within the Council of Governments oversight. There are a variety of commissions on agings across the state and across the nation. They are stood up within city governments, county governments. Some are part of the Department of Human Services. Some of them serve as advisory committees. Some of them act as independent organizations to provide advocacy and policy recommendations. This particular group within the Area Agency on Aging, I really see as an opportunity to partner with our member organizations to provide feedback and input purely in an advisory capacity. There are opportunities at the state level to be more engaged around policy for older adults, as well as at the national level with our National Agency on Aging organization that we're a member of. Their usual policy conferences in April, and they pull together policy folks working at the local levels. And so there's a lot of opportunity moving forward for these folks to be engaged. There are also opportunities that I expect we may see some movement between RAC members, members moving potentially from RAC to the Commission on Aging, because it may better suit what they hope to volunteer in. And so I really see this as a great opportunity for folks who come to us who want to volunteer around aging, to allow us to direct them to their to the best group for their desires. So there's just a lot of great potential with this group.
I heard you right then. This is not a policy making or budget authority advisory only.
Absolutely, yes, sir. These are the people who can sit in on local and county and state meetings and provide advisory. You know, much like we do with the legislative committee from the board of directors, we could have folks who could speak into that from the Colorado Senior Lobby, for example, or attend other meetings and provide additional input. This is strictly an advisory committee. Yes, sir.
We didn't want to create another level of bureaucracy or, okay.
No.
Thank you.
No.
Other questions from board members?
Yes, Madam Chair, Commissioner Stana. In the board workshop, I did ask the question. I think it's always important whenever we kind of take on new roles or responsibilities to make sure we understand if there's any financial obligations as a result of that. I thought that was adequately answered at the board workshop, but just for the benefit of the broader board, there's no financial obligations of any consequence associated with accepting this task, other than there'll be some staff time put into helping to administer it. And as we mentioned in the board workshop, coffee and donuts when they hold the meetings. Beyond that, we don't have any other obligations. So I think that's an important thing to always discuss when we're considering adding additional, things to the PPACG list of things that we do.
Great, Stan. Ben, would you like to make a motion?
Oh, yeah, sure. I'd like to make a motion then to approve the transfer of this Commission on Aging from the City of Colorado Springs to the Pikes Peak Area Council Area Agency on Aging.
Well said. A second?
I'll second John Graham Manitou.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Jody. I look forward to next month. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the nominating committee for the executive committee membership for 2021. So who's leading this?
Madam Chair, I can just sort of kick this off.
Oh, sorry, I have my dog.
No worries. Hard to believe it's that time of year again already to think about our executive committee for next year for 2021. So we put out a questionnaire to board members to see who is interested in serving on the executive committee. We have 5 spots on the executive committee for officers. And we had 5 people respond back that they were interested. I'll get to that in just a moment. But then also asked who's interested in serving on the nominating committee if you don't want to be an officer. So just to summarize real quick, and Jess, if you want to scroll down just a little bit further, get the responses back, super. So the 5 members expressed interest in serving as an officer on the executive committee for next year. You can see here, Sharon Thompson, Yolanda Avila, Don Wilson, Stan Vanderwerf, and Dick Elsner. So those 5 are interested in serving in our 5 spots, and 4 members expressed interest in serving on the nominating committee: Bruce Davis, Holly Williams, Norm Steen, and John Graham. So the action for today is for the chair to appoint the 4 members to the nominating committee and have that ratified by the board today. And then that nominating committee will meet between now and the December 9th meeting and come back with a recommended slate of officers for 2021. A little bit easier this year, I think, potentially, because you have 5 people interested in serving on 5 slots. Yeah, that's the process that we'll conduct here for the next month or so.
Great. I think that was well explained. So today we are just approving the slate of the nominating committee of Bruce Davis, Holly Williams, Norm Steen, and John Graham. So if there are no questions, I would appreciate a motion to approve them.
This is Commissioner Bremer. I'll second.
Thank you.
Who was the first on that, please?
I didn't get the first.
Don Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, we have a motion and a second from Commissioner Bremer. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? Okay, thank you. And thanks to the 4 of you for serving on this committee. It's important work. Okay, our last, did someone?
If someone from staff could forward to each of us the other contact information so we can make arrangements for meeting place.
Thank you.
We will do that for sure. Good.
Thanks, Norm. Okay, our last action item is the regional award proposal. And Andy, I believe you're going to present that to us.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. And just real briefly, we've talked about this briefly in the past, and I've mentioned that this is just an idea, a concept that we've had in mind for a while and thought for a variety of reasons, especially in 2020, seemed like a good time to move forward with something like this. The proposal is that the board would create a regional award that they would give out each year, and suggesting that we call it the Communities Working Together Award. That's our tagline for PPACG. And basically what it would do is recognize an individual or individuals that are really going above and beyond and working across jurisdictional boundaries to improve our region, to improve our quality of life. It feels like it's one of those things where it's the right thing to do. There's so much outstanding work that's happening as far as elected officials and non-elected officials trying to improve our region, especially in those categories that fall within the PPACG mission. So just very briefly, as far as the criteria that we're suggesting, suggested any individual in the region, elected or not elected, is eligible to be nominated for the award. Second of the 3 criteria, the individual must exemplify working across jurisdictional boundaries to improve and strengthen the region, particularly in the areas of focus under the PPACG mission. And third and final, the individual exhibits the qualities exemplified by our former board member and former Woodland Park Mayor, Neil Levy. And those are selflessness, compassion, integrity, commitment to improving the community, listening to all sides of an issue, and trying to reach consensus. So it's my recommendation that we go forward with it, but it's totally discretionary and up to the board. I think if we did get this in place, I think we could still do this this year. Come back if we had a couple of volunteers from the board would work with me to accept applications, accept nominations, and we could come back and the board could make that actual award in December. I think we still have time to be able to do that this year. Good suggestion that came out of the board workshop earlier this week. I think Sharon Thompson suggested that let's not be beholden to a specific date that we've got to get the award issued by. It may not always be December. It could be in the summer or fall, depending on other things that may be going on throughout the year. So that's a really good suggestion there. But happy to answer any questions.
Yeah. Thank you, Andy. And as mentioned in the workshop, also so great to be doing something positive during a time when it just seems like everything's so negative. So I really appreciate that you took this on and you turned your great idea into action. So I am very supportive of this. And are there any other questions or comments, observations? And if not, I would appreciate a motion.
This is Bruce with Victor. I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Bruce.
Elkhart, second.
Thank you, Val. Any other comments before we vote? Okay, thank you everyone for supporting this. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any nays? Okay, motion passes unanimously. Thank you, everyone.
The only other thing I would mention, Madam Chair, is if there are a couple of volunteers that would be interested in serving on the nominating committee, review committee this year, to reach out and let me know, maybe contact, just email myself and the chair. That would be super. Appreciate that.
Yeah, good comment. I forgot to do that. Thank you. Okay, that concludes our action items. We are on to our informational items. The first one being the 2020 work program.
Good morning, board members. Jessica McMullen, your Policy and Communications Manager.
Good
So
morning.
every year we do a work program. The work program is designed to map out for the board what we're going to do. A lot more specifically than the strategic plan does. Strategic plan gives us our guide. Work program shows you how we're going to do it each year. This is your chance to view it for information. It'll go to our CAC this month for them to provide any input or feedback to see if they've got any thoughts on it. And it will come to you for approval in December. The parts of the information item that I really want to make sure I focus on with you is the results of our 2020 work program. It was one of our attachments in here. And Jess, if you'll scroll down to it, it should be my first attachment. Okay, it's my second attachment. So scroll back up just a little bit. We provided you guys a 20 for 2020 to kind of map out the biggest and highest priority things we expected to do in 2020. I did these as a checklist so you could see how much we accomplished. Obviously, COVID did put a wrench in some of our plans, and all of those I did highlight so you would see where we didn't do what we told you we'd do. But I also wanted you to see all of the places we did. There are a lot of really great ones in here. And I hoped that you would all have the chance to look at those. Please excuse me. Some of the major highlights that I wanted to make sure to point out to all of you were, we were able to provide support for our seniors through the Area Agency on Aging throughout all of COVID, including support for our service providers, providing additional assistance, coordinating the distribution of the Federal CARES Act funding. That was one of the big things we didn't know we were going to do, but was a big part of the guiding factors that you all have given us. We followed the adoption of the 2045 Long Range Transportation Plan and started prepping for another round of transportation updates. We're excited that we're going to be doing the Tri-County Transportation Study. That'll be beginning soon. We made progress on becoming the Specialized Human Services Transportation Mobility Coordinating Agency, bringing on Laura and bringing back on mobility coordination within PPACG. We made a lot of progress with implementation coordination on the Joint Land Use Study Program recommendations. Brian and the team did a lot of cooperative efforts and coordination with local military and local governments to make sure that joint land use study recommendations have been being worked on. And then the last one we really wanted to highlight is development of the air quality strategies by joining the EPA Ozone Advance Program, that voluntary program that pretty sure Sam is talking about next. We've really been taking what you asked us to do for air quality and moving forward with that. So that's some of the big highlights from 2020. I'll go into more detail of the 2021 at our presentation next month. Does anyone have any questions or thoughts, since this is kind of just an information to let you know it's coming and to brag a little bit about all the stuff we did this past 2020?
Yeah, it's really good to see all these accomplishments down in writing, because you really did a lot this year and you should be commended. It's very impressive, especially considering we've all been at home so much of this time. So thank you for getting this work done, Jessica.
We've got a lot of great folks on this team and some great leadership with you guys and Andy, and I really feel like I'm proud of seeing what we did when I was putting together these results.
I love hearing that. Thank you. Anyone else?
It makes me tired just to look at this list of everything. It just takes a really high functioning organization to make sure everybody's effective in their lane. They've got resources to do their job properly. They've got the connections and the relationships, not only in the organization among jurisdictions, but with state agencies. A lot of things have to work right for this much to happen. And it's exciting to see. So congratulations, everybody. Great job.
And this is Commissioner Stan with some comments as well.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. So I agree. I appreciate all the great work that everybody has done in a really, really tough year. So it's really nice to see these kinds of things. Do have a question on the work plan right now. I'm sure it's in here somewhere, but I just would like to get a better understanding of, one of the things that we've been doing in PPACG is really working towards stepping up and playing a bigger role at a statewide level. That's including our legislative committee and several other things that we're now doing. I think that's actually really important, because really we've got 2 guerrilla MPOs in the state. We're one of those 2. And that means that we can really, I think, flex our muscles. And I appreciate that we've done that. And it's probably important to have a discussion about, is there more that we can do about flexing our muscles to make sure that we can interact with the state and deliver what we need for our community. So what is in this document with regard to treatment for that?
We get into, please forgive me, I'm actually going to pull it up. With the advocacy part, we know that so much of it has to stay flexible. We don't know what we're going to see from the federal level or the state level for bills. And that does impact what we do and how we do it. I'm going to pull up. So one of our major highlights, our major projects, is going to be legislative advocacy with our state and federal delegation. We call that out as one of our top things we want to be doing. But we also call it out again under, as you noted, we are sorted a little bit by program, and our legislative falls under under admin. So the ones that we really called out are making sure we provide those updates to the board, those monthly reports on what's happening at the state, like we do. Developing the annual legislative priority issues. That's one of those things that all of you and our legislators can have a very simple way of knowing what matters to PPACG. That's what lets us be such strong advocates. Making sure we're engaging the delegation, like you said, making sure that we're really getting in with them, we're talking to them and they know what we're doing. So those were some of the ways that we really called it out. And always, when we do our report back, we'll want you to see that not only did we do the measurable products that we put in here, but that we do the things that we take advantage of the opportunities we see when it comes to advocacy and legislation.
I'd say, past the legislation as well, we've got pretty good active participation in the stack. Thank you to several board members. It would be interesting to me to know if there's more we can do about, not necessarily on the legislative side, but also in, some measure of more active participation in state boards, whatever that may mean. That could be maybe part of the work plan. I think we've got some great work we've done. What I don't know is if there's other places we can go to get a little bit more of that done. That's a thought.
And I hope that's something we continue to pursue. And obviously I will see what we can include in the work program to bring back to you guys in December.
Thank you.
That's a great comment. And Jessica and I can work together when we do bring the final work program back in December for adoption. We can identify all the stuff that's happening already that you may not really hear and know about. And the AAA, Jody's very actively engaged, and other AAA staff with state committees that we work with, same in transportation, same in environmental planning. So would be nice to maybe list that out and describe that kind of all in one spot. So be happy to do that. And maybe that'll help us kind of decide where there's some other opportunities to get involved. Good stuff.
Great, thanks.
Maybe just one example, a committee that I'll be stepping off of is the Freight Advisory Committee. That's directed under the recent FAST Act. It is primarily a commercial membership. So we got trucking companies, rail lines, all these heavy transport freight. And so somebody's stepping off, that is a stack appointed position. So whoever takes our stack should be connecting. And I'm going to send an email off today to our chairman indicating I'll be stepping off and that he would have to reappoint. We might want to queue up our next stack rep to seek a nomination to that FAC. And there's a couple others too, the CDOT Efficiency and Accountability Committee and others. So right, those boards, you're exactly on, right on, Commissioner, that those are important.
Thank you, Norm. Any other comments? Okay, well, thank you, Jessica. As always. Okay, our last informational item is the 21 PPACG Ozone Advance Program.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, good morning, Samantha.
Wonderful. All right, and thanks, Jessica, for pulling that memo up. So as you know, I'm Samantha Bailey, the environmental planner for PPACG. And as you know as well, we are the responsible entity for air quality management throughout the region, with ozone currently being the pollutant of concern. This year, back in January, PPACG committed to the EPA Ozone Advance Program. PPACG is also the first organization in Colorado to participate. The EPA Ozone Advance Program, The EPA Ozone Advance Program promotes local actions in attainment areas like our region to reduce ozone pollution, to help those continue to maintain the national ambient air quality standards of the Clean Air Act. Being a part of this program gives us a direct relationship with EPA, technical assistance and guidance, and participant-specific funding opportunities. EPA would also be aware of our mitigation efforts if we ever had to discuss with EPA a potential non-attainment designation. Being a part of this program, PPACG is required to submit an annual report of the efforts we're conducting to lower ozone pollution, along with future strategies, as well as the efforts of our partner organizations. At the October Board of Directors meeting, you approved the strategies to be listed within our overall report and for PPACG to implement in 2021. Today, I brought to you our first draft of the document. For any feedback or revisions you may have, you can find this document within your board packets. The report is due to EPA in January, so I plan to bring you the final document for approval at the December Board of Directors meeting. This plan is also be reviewed and will be recommended for approval by the Air Quality Technical Committee and the Community Advisory Committee. With that, I'll take any questions or comments regarding the document.
Thank you, Samantha. Great work. Are there any questions from the board, knowing this will come back next month? Okay, well, I guess you gave a great presentation. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone.
That concludes our informational items. We are on to reports. And as always, first is military. I don't know if we have any of our, I see Mike Schaefer. Mike, are you there? Anyone else on the line from our military installations?
Yeah, this is Ron Jeffrey from the Peterson-Schriever Garrison.
Hi, Ron. Good to hear your
Oh.
voice.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it. Madam Chair, board members, thanks for the opportunity to provide an update on what's happening at the Peterson-Schriever Garrison. I'll start with an update on COVID-19. Effective on the 5th of November, the Garrison Commander issued Public Health Directive number 2. Some of the significant items in that include in-person work schedules are not to exceed 50% of the workforce in our work centers. Participants in informal and unofficial gatherings are limited to no more than 10 people. And then participation in required in-person meetings continues to be limited and constrained by venue size to limit the potential for the spread of COVID. We continue to monitor the local situation and are prepared at any time to adjust our posture as dictated by the conditions that are present either on base or in the local community. Another item of interest is on the 21st of October, the Space Operations Command was activated. On that same day, General Whiting was promoted to Lieutenant General and receiving his 3rd star and took assumed command of the Space Operations Command. So a significant development for the first field command of the U.S. Space Force. And with that, unless there's any questions, those are the updates I was going to pass today.
Thank you, Ron. Any questions for Ron? Okay, I believe Melissa's on the line.
Yes, good morning. Can you hear me okay?
We can. Thank you, Melissa.
Okay. Just a COVID update. We have seen an increase in COVID positive cases, primarily in our cadet wing. So we are locking some things down and just for awareness, all academics are 100% virtual right now. There have been some restrictions on where people can go and what people can do. We have returned effective the 2nd of November. The installation commander returned us to phase 2A reopening, which essentially increases our telework and limits some of the services that are offered on the base. And this wouldn't be an update without a football update. We are still planning to hold our game Friday night at Falcon Stadium. It is a no fan event, so we won't have anybody in the stands with the exception of possibly having some cadets in the stands Friday night. The game is going to air 7:30 on Fox Sports. And then we are still scheduled for a Thanksgiving game against CSU. And that one, same rules apply. We will not have spectators in the stands, but that one will be airing on CBS Sports Network. And that is all I have, unless there are any questions.
Great. Thank you, Melissa. And go Falcons. I'm just going to say that I think the whole city saw the B-2 flying over a couple days ago, and it got a lot of attention. So it was very exciting to see.
Pretty impressive. Yes, ma'am.
Pretty impressive. And who are the Falcons playing on Friday or Saturday?
I think it's, I'm sorry, I didn't note that. I think it's San Jose, but let me check that to be sure.
Curious. Does anyone else know? Football fans out there? Guess not.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Melissa.
Yes, ma'am. Okay. Thanks.
Any other military installation representatives on the line?
Jill, I just have a question for Ron.
Okay.
Ron, I'm wondering what the impact of the CL-94 improvements is having travel to and from the base.
Absolutely. So the construction on Highway 94 certainly slows down the speeds. In fact, I've been running back and forth up 94 for the past couple of days. It's not a major impact when I'm leaving the base or even returning because the volume of traffic and the number of people who are coming into the garrison or the Schriever Air Force Base part of it is reduced because we've gone to compliance with our public health directive, which maximizes telework. So certainly I can see there's an impact, but I think at this point it's manageable just because of the situation we're in right now. That answer your question?
Yeah, I would just like to give feedback to CDOT as to how they're doing, how they're serving our customers. Thank you.
Absolutely. So I think they're doing a good job, and I think they're keeping both the people on the road and their workers safe. And again, from my perspective, just anecdotal from driving back and forth for the past couple of days, it seems to be working out pretty well. Thanks.
Good to hear. Thank you.
Yeah, good to hear. Good question, Norm. And Brian Potts has let us know that New Mexico is who Air Force is playing in this weekend.
Yes, ma'am. I was just going to chime in. It is New Mexico.
Beat the Lobos. Okay. Anyone else from the military installations? Okay, we will move on to our CDOT monthly update. Is Rich on the line or Shane? Anyone?
I saw John Hall earlier. Is John still with us?
Okay.
Can you guys hear me now? Sorry about that.
Yes. Hi, John.
Apparently needed to unmute twice. I didn't realize I was muted twice. Okay, so yes, I can provide the update. The first thing I guess I would like to talk about, so Richard Zamora was mentioning to me that as the state continues to forecast an operating deficit in the coming year, in the coming fiscal year, I think many of you probably know more than me about a proposal for $200 million like a state stimulus funding, which I guess the current proposal is 130 shovel-ready projects and 70 for revitalizing of Colorado's main streets. So the latest I heard from Rich this morning is that that's certainly out there, but it's not apparently on the agenda of the legislative session right this second. So more to follow on that. As far as projects are concerned, I appreciate the feedback about the 94 work related to MAMSIC. I'll pass that on. That project is looking to wrap up paving. And then the ITS work, so that's the conduit and fiber optics for really that entire stretch all the way out to where Schriever is, will continue into next year. As far as other MAMSIP projects like South Academy and all, the whole program, I'm sorry, excluding South Academy, like I-25, that whole program is moving forward, and they're looking to have negotiations with the CMGC contractor mid to late winter. And I think South Academy is the one that's on its a little bit further out timeline, more into next year before that might get legs. The I-25 cable barrier project is under construction with anticipated completion by the end of the year. Shane asked me to bring up that there's a US 24 West Corridor presentation by CDOT that I think this group, the board here, had requested, and he just wanted to make sure I noted that he's got that in the plan for something like February or March to provide that presentation. Surface treatment projects. There is really the only active one for this coming year. It is under advertisement. It's to overlay some ramps, highway ramps. It includes the 115 ramps there to NORAD, to Cheyenne Mountain Air Station, along with I-25 ramps at Academy, Interquest, and Briar Gate. Some improvements there. The Rural Bridge Grant project is under design and still moving forward. It's a design build project, right? So it's got a short list here expected for mid-December, and then RFPs in the January-February timeframe, and they are certainly hoping to kick off construction by the second half of 2021. All the ramp meters that have been installed so far in Colorado Springs are up and running, and just so right now we're in the phase of optimizing them. I happen to be designing the next ramp metering project to put a few more from Woodman Academy and even Northgate northbound ramp meter there. So that's stuff going on for the future. I did want to clarify two things from earlier. Commissioner Steen had a comment about a resilience issue, and I didn't get what project or what specific issue that was. So I sure would love to just write that down so I can pass it on to Rich and Shane, what we could work on that. And I wanted to note that I have notes about an interest from the board here as far as, a study, if CDOT had resources or knew of resources or something like that to study the driver behavior deterioration that we've noticed and what the proximate causes of that might be. So yeah, Commissioner Steen, if you could just let me know what that.
Yeah, it's just a general comment, John, about resilience at the state level also may require embracing resilience at the local level. Sometimes our programs can be so structured at the state level they don't accommodate agility at the local level.
Very good. I interpreted you as having a specific example as well, but it sounds like just general, and I'll make sure to pass that on. Yeah. Thank you.
I gave some past examples, but nothing current. But thanks for asking.
And I'd just like to close out that's interestingly, the Air Force game this weekend is not against Army though, but I'll just say, go Army, beat Air Force, beat Navy. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions for John?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Sharon.
On the I-25 cable barrier project, you said it's going to be done by the end of the year. How high is that going to come up? Because we had another crossover accident right south of exit 132 last week that did result in another death, and then another very serious accident yesterday where they all ended up in the median.
Wow.
And I don't know for sure speeds involved, but the injuries that you saw at that accident yesterday, definitely there was probably some speed involved.
Yeah, well, I apologize. I do not have the exact mile markers of those crashes. We are definitely aware. Shane, mentioned to me about that fatality accident, not about the more recent one. And I haven't talked to our traffic group, but definitely would be aware. It is my understanding that the cable barrier project does include the area that fatality was in. That hasn't reached it there yet, but I really shouldn't. I really shouldn't say that under oath or anything. I would need to get back to you on the exact mileposts and stuff and do some more research on the exact locations.
That would be great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Also, how late in the evening do the ramp meters run? Because I was kind of surprised at 8:30 in one evening to have them still on at Garden of the Gods southbound.
Well, they're based on traffic, the actual volumes out on I-25. That's how they're generally have sensors that actually, detect the volumes on I-25 main line, and that's how they decide to engage. So it should be dependent on the volumes, and if late into the evening even there's high volumes that would make the merging benefit from continuing ramp metering, it's not specific times.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for John?
Can you guys just let me know who should I email when I get some information about the mileposts and all on the?
You can probably email Andy and he can get that out to us.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Andy. Okay. Thank you, John. Okay, our next report is STAC, and Norm is here.
Thank you. Thank you, Jill. STAC met day before yesterday, regular meeting. I'm gonna get a couple things that maybe were not in the minutes, not in the report, but it started off with the Transportation Commission report from our chairman, Vince Rogowski. Notable is that the TC approved the new, or actually renewed, the Regional Priority Program formula. The RPP is probably the most flexible source of funding available to regions. It used to be about 150 million. It's not about 48 to 50 million total statewide. What's important to note is that the formula continues to give weight to urban areas. About 5 years ago, PPACG advocated for a stronger emphasis for these funds to the MPOs, and that formula was approved for the weighting of the three numbers that go into how those numbers are distributed. 50% to population, that's significant. The rural areas would advocate for the other two, and that's lane miles and freight miles. So for now, the Transportation Commissioners continue to favor urban areas through that weighting of the population in distribution of RPP. Notably, that formula is used not just for RPP distribution, it seems to be applied to many other funds as well, when you have to decide how you carve up a state pot to the 15 TPRs around the state. So there was some pushback from the stack. That formula was not the stack recommendation, but it was the CDOT staff recommendation. So there may be some discussion on that in the future. Director Liu opened some comments, 3 focus areas, the government budget overview, the governor's budget overview. And John's right, that $200 million of legislative money to spend as they choose, apparently giving the money to the legislature for one-time legislative projects, 200 million. And I don't know how much of that could go to transportation, but we'll see. Total of 1.28 billion overall for economic stimulus. A second focus point was the focus on internet. During COVID, a lot of agencies, delivery of services statewide, have focused on the ability of the internet to function. So anybody from CDOT that's listening, obviously CDOT owns a lot of fiber. There's an increased focus from the governor's office through Director Liu to make that fiber more widely available. Just a case of that is that the governor's now appointed a state chief information officer, CIO. His name is Tony Neal Graves. Met Neil, his wife, by the way, is a Douglas County commissioner. Lisa took Roger Partridge's place. So Tony Neal Graves would be a person to know from CDOT as we make inroads into broadband. And this is not my broadband message. This is the governor's and Director Liu's comments. And then finally, a long discussion on Main Street grants. I don't know if we have any Main Street grants in the Pikes Peak region. If we applied for any, if anybody knows about those, but a lot of discussion there. And then finally, a pretty discussion on the criteria for evaluating new interchanges in the state, called the 1601 interchange approval process. Lengthy discussion, good board meeting, and of course all done virtually. So, and on one more final note, I did step down as the STAC vice chair. I've served in that position for a little over a year now, and replacing me as the STAC vice chair was Heather Sloop from the Northwest TPR. Vince Rogowski was reelected as chairman, state chairman. I think he's probably been in that seat for maybe, what, 15 years more? There was a consideration of the bylaws to change that to a term limited. It is not. So, and Holly, I see you just clicked on if you have any comments there. But that's it for the staff report. There should be any comments or questions.
Yeah, I think he's been chair probably since 2004 or so. So everybody likes him and he plays fair and, you know, he knows the stuff. So I think that works out really well for everybody.
Yep. Next STAC meeting is December 11th.
Okay. All right. This is Stan. You may have just seen the text from Jill. She's got a fire alarm going off in her house, so she's trying to work that. So I'll kind of continue with the agenda, being the vice chair. Are there any questions for Norm or anybody within the Transportation Advisory Committee? And hearing none, let's go to the next item. I think we are up for Community Advisory Committee. Do we have any comments?
We're actually, Mr. Vice Chair, I think we're deferring the committee reports since they're included in your packet. Looking at the packet, yeah. I
There you
think
go.
yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, appreciate that. You do have that noted on the right side. Moving then down to CDOT monthly update. Have we got that covered, or?
Yeah, that's what Mr. Hall, John Hall covered, so we're good there.
Executive Director's report, I think, is our next one then.
Sure, and I'll be brief, just two items. I should have asked our two new employees to join us. I don't know that that they have, but we hired two new people since our last board meeting. Looking at each vacancy pretty cautiously to make sure that there's a demonstrated need to fill that position, just given where we all are with COVID and finances and so forth, but hired two awesome new people here to join our team. Melody Dowell is in our AAA and she's our program services and contracts administrator. I don't think she's in the meeting, but we'll bring her to the next meeting virtually and introduce her to everybody. But she took the spot of Lisa Aldridge, who was with us for about 10 or 12 years and just recently retired. So really super happy to have Melody on board. And this week, our newest employee started. Jesse Duncan is our IT and web coordinator. Very happy to have Jesse on board. He brings a wealth of experience to us, and he took Jenny's position, Jenny Phillips, who moved on to the Air Force Academy last month. So that was first item. Second item is just real briefly, we had a good legislative committee meeting this past Monday, and I'll defer to Commissioners Elsner and Vanderwerf if you have some details that you want to provide, but good discussion. The big takeaway is that the group was planning for our legislative roundtable with our state legislators, which is scheduled for Wednesday, December 2nd from 8:30 until 10 a.m. It's all by Zoom. It's all going to be a remote get together. So we talked a little bit about some of the challenges and making sure that everybody's got a chance to speak, but it's not, overly dominated by one legislator or one district and so forth. But I think we've come up with a pretty good work plan there. We are looking at some minor updates to the legislative priorities for 2021. I think primarily to reflect the pandemic and the need to be able to recover economically from the pandemic in 2021. That's going to be a key theme, obviously, that we have for next year. But otherwise, I don't think we're looking at any substantial changes to the priorities for next year, but would defer to the commissioners and others who were at the meeting to provide further updates there.
Great. So first off, just welcome to Melanie and Jesse. Thanks for coming on board. And then Commissioner Elsner, do you have any further comments beyond Andy's comments with regard to our legislative committee meeting?
No, I think Andy covered it pretty well. I do think one thing we need to be cognizant of is the governor with his request for a special session before the end of the year, trying to figure out what additional money they can throw where, and we need to make sure everybody is aware of that. So if there are some things that come up quickly in that session, we'll probably be getting notes out to everybody if they have anything to do with our region.
Okay, great. Thank you, Commissioner. For the others that participated in the legislative committee meeting, does anybody else have comments with regard to that? Okay, hearing none, I think at this point we can move on to member entity announcements. Do we have any announcements? And we'll just take these as we go forward. Looks like Mr. Pico, you have a comment. You've got your hand up. Please go forward with that.
Yeah, hello all. This was not planned to be my last meeting, and I hope it's not with you. As you all know, I'm kind of moving up to the legislature. Things are moving fast up there, and so this might be my last time with you. As you probably all know, there's a special session has been called with details are pending, and what an elect has to do with representative elect has to do with a special session. Not quite clear at this point, perhaps a observer status or something, but dates are still up in the air. So this may be my last time with you. If so, it's been an honor. It has been a tremendous experience and very eye-opening, and has prepared me a lot for the transportation issues up in the state. So Hopefully it's not, but thanks, and it's been a pleasure.
I would say thank you, Andy, for all your great service, including your time in leadership here at PPACG. Outstanding, but you know, you won't be going far. We're going to be working with you, trying to make sure that our local issues and initiatives stay in the minds of the legislators up in Denver. And since you know so much about what we do, it'll be an easy conversation with you. So we really look forward to your service there as well. And maybe at this point, we'll give Andy a round of applause for his service on the board.
Thanks all.
I'm sorry?
Thanks all, and I do appreciate that.
Thank you. I see a hand up for John Leosatos. Go ahead.
No, sorry, that was the applause reaction because I did really appreciate working with you, Councilmember Pico, and it's been great, and bear down.
Great. Thank you. And Holly, I noticed that you had a hand as well. Was that an applause for Andy, or did you have a comment?
That was applause for Andy.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you very much. And then let's go ahead and continue. Are there any other member entity announcements? I do have one, but I'll defer that for after everybody else.
I have one, but I don't know what you mean by hand up. So you'll have to teach me later how to put my hand up instead of interrupting. We are excited to have our COVID-spaced Christmas tree lighting on Friday in Fountain this year. We will have people in their cars. We're going to be doing it from a local AM radio transmitter we have, and people's distanced on the courtyard there. And Santa Claus will be on the balcony, and the kids will have this beautiful sparkly red mailbox to drop their letters to Santa, since they can't hand them to him personally. And they will be collected in the box, and the box will move inside City Hall so the kids can come in all month and drop their letters off for Santa and keep the tradition moving. We're really excited to start a new tradition. Instead of just gathering around this large noble fir we have at Mayor's Park, we actually brought in a living tree, starting a new tradition this year that we will bring in every year, and then we'll plant them around the city with plaques for which year they were planted and like an event that was pertinent that year. So obviously this tree for 2020 will have a pandemic COVID-19 as a significant event, but we're going to map those around the city and make it not only a addition to the city tree-wise, but maybe a walking event too, with a walking tour to tour the trees as years go by. We think it would be a pretty cool thing to start that tradition for 2021, 22, 23, and then people can watch the trees grow and have maybe some history that go with them.
Great. Thank you, Sharon. Any questions for Sharon?
You can go to our city Facebook page, City of Fountain Facebook page, and sign up, since we do have to limit the number of people in the courtyard, but you know, we're excited about starting a new tradition.
Great, thank you. Any other comments, member entity announcements?
I'll stand real quick.
Go ahead, Norm.
You may have heard that as Teller County moved to the more severe orange from yellow, included in the orange was a complete shutdown of our casinos. We worked very hard over about 3 days, and were successful in moving casinos statewide. Of course, it's just Teller and Gilpin counties who have casinos, but moving casinos into an indoor event category, not a separate event of their own, which kept casinos open. We preserved about 1,200 jobs by that decision by public health, and a very small outbreak. The casinos are probably more careful of anybody, probably with the exception of doctors' offices. But anyway, casinos are open in Teller County. We of course continue to stay safe and work very hard at that. Thanks.
Great, thank you. And my congratulations to you and the other commissioners for your success in doing that. That would have been, I think, a severe blow to Teller to temporarily lose those 1,200 jobs. And it's my understanding that there really was either no outbreaks or very small numbers of outbreaks in the casinos. So it's a place that had produced proper protocols, was behaving well, and deserved to stay open.
Well, and shut down casinos, you essentially shut down Cripple Creek. Every business would likely close. in the service industry, salaries are low anyway. Very, very thin resiliency margin in Cripple Creek. So anyway, appreciate the support from Colorado, from the governor's office and from the Colorado Department of Human CDPAG.
Great, thank you. Any other member entity announcements or questions for Norm?
Stan, this is your colleague, Commissioner Bremer.
Hello, Commissioner Bremer. Go ahead, Cam.
I have a feeling you're going to touch on one thing that I'm going to let you run with. But I also wanted to point out our El Paso County Health Department has been working like crazy. And I recently found out that that next Monday, the 23rd, is Public Health Appreciation Day. And I think there's no time like the present to encourage them. They're working around the clock with rules and guidelines changing by the second, and they're doing their best to keep up with those, to interpret those, and to work with our businesses and come alongside and partner with them to figure out how they can continue to serve how those businesses and nonprofits and organizations all over the place can continue to serve our community. So I just wanted to say, Susan Whelan, and she's been the recipient of many awards recently for her work early on, really in being prepared. But the work has not stopped, and if anything, it's at a rather intense moment. So I think anybody on this group or anywhere else that wants to shout out to public health that's really been serving our entire region, that would be greatly appreciated, I am sure. Do that in your own way.
Oh, thank you, Commissioner. I appreciate that. Actually, it's good to know Monday, the 23rd, as you mentioned, is Public Health. Did I understand that correctly? The 23rd, Public Health Appreciation Day.
Correct.
Okay, great. With that in mind, they have worked hard, and maybe many of you know this. They've taken essentially no time off. They're working ridiculous hours. It's been a real challenge over there, and it's been difficult in many cases because some members of the public have been kind of tough on them, and they're in a really difficult. They're really playing a really difficult role. Commissioner Bremer, for whatever it's worth, not only in appreciating that you bring that up, but maybe there's something we can do to express some appreciation from PPACG. And the first thing that comes to mind for me is maybe a letter that the board approves to send over there and just thank them for their work for the community. I think it's so important that they know that we all appreciate the hard work that they're doing, the tough decisions that they've had to make. And so maybe Madam Chair and Andy, maybe there's something we can do with respect to this.
I like that. I think especially since our AAA folks, Jody and others have worked closely with them as we were working with our vulnerable senior population. There's definitely a good relationship there. So yeah, we'd be happy to draft something up and get that around. Good suggestion.
Yep, I agree. And thanks, Cami, for bringing that up. Are there any other comments before I make mine on? We're at member entity announcements, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thanks for taking over the meeting, Stan.
You're welcome. So hearing no more, I'll go ahead and just make my comment. And Commissioner Bremer, I think you were accurate in probably guessing a little bit about what I plan on saying. This week, I received a presentation from Public Health with regard to the planning that's been going on behind the scenes that's associated with the distribution and use of the vaccines that are on their way. And what I would like to do is mention to everybody here on our board and also the staff, I was very impressed with the amount of work, the massive amount of work that's going on behind the scenes in public health to distribute the vaccines once they're made available. There's, without getting into too much detail, because there's an enormous amount of planning, there's basically 3 phases. And the first phase with any luck, might come in December, but the FDA hasn't approved it yet. So it's either late December or it might be in January. It will be a limited distribution and will be focused in certain segments of our society, particularly, say, for I think some of the groups that I heard were our healthcare workers. We need to make sure that our healthcare workers stay healthy so that they can help take care of the rest of us that have COVID challenges. So that's one group. Another is first responders, and there's a limited number of others. So as far as seniors and the older demographics of our population, there may be a very limited distribution in that area in the first round. But there are more rounds coming, and there will be hundreds of thousands of vaccines ultimately distributed to El Paso County. The plan is extensive, and it's just a matter of when there's FDA approval and when the distribution starts. But my sense of it is we are ready to accept those and get them distributed into our community. And I say that with a certain sense of pride that they've been able to build a plan and get ready to go forward with that. I think it's important that we know this because we can have the satisfaction of knowing that there's a lot of planning going on with that. So between now and then, what we need to do, right? Stay the course, do all the protocols as much as you possibly can, and let's do everything we can to be safe. The help is on the way, but we need to play our role in getting to those points to continue to do what we can. One last thing is, it's obvious to everybody we have a huge increase. We did not have this challenge in the summer. We have it today. And the best that those in the know can assess for the reason for this is obviously change in weather, which means more people are staying indoors. So one, I think, a very important thing, in addition to following the protocols that we need to do ourselves and encourage others to do, is dress up warmly and continue to do your outdoor activities. Go to the parks, do your bicycling, do your jogging, spend time outdoors, because when we were doing that in the summer, we had better control over what was going on with the numbers of cases. So I would encourage everybody to do as much as they can, following the kinds of behaviors they had in the summer. It will help spread us out, and that's really important. So those are the points that I wanted to make. And Madam Chair, I just hand it back over to you at this point. Thank you.
So are we done with member entity announcements then? Okay. Okay, I think we have one final meeting in the year next month, and that is the end of our agenda. Is there anything else before I adjourn? Okay. Thank you, everyone, and thanks for being flexible with me. My whole house was blown up, so we are adjourned.
All right.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.